course, to an interview we promised earlier. Of course, what is the progress on connectivity right here in Nairobi, of course, and across Kenya? We are honored to have none other than the managing director of Kenya Power, Mr. Tarus. Thank you so much for being here today. Of course, starting what we have there is our tag is Powering Kenya, and we're just looking at what are some of the initiatives, what are some of the progress you've made so far. Of course, we start with the last mile connectivity program. Preface.
Thank you very much. Now, when we talk about last mile program, this is a program that, through the efforts of the government of Kenya to ensure that access rates are increased. Remember, the government has a target of increasing the access rate to 70% and eventually universal access by the year 2020. In the last mile program, we have phase 1, which is currently ongoing, and this phase is on average about 56% in terms of its progression. And this is out of resources that came out from the African Development Bank to the tune of 13.5 billion shillings. We have other phases coming on board. Phase 2, which is currently under evaluation. We are actually almost going out to award. And resources in this phase 2 is coming from both the World Bank and the second phase of the African Development Bank. We have 15 billion shillings and 13.5 billion shillings respectively. We are also in discussions with the AFD, the French, to give us about 9 billion shillings, and JICA coming on board with about 6 billion shillings. So overall, we have then, put together resources to the tune of about 63 billion shillings to take care of last mile connectivity. Of course, discussions are still going with other financiers with a view to getting them on board and allow us drive this last mile agenda.
Based on target, if you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 into what you've achieved thus far, and it looks like a lot of interest, especially from financiers, to work with Kenya Power, what score will you give yourself?
Well, at the risk of, becoming, overly ambitious, I would give myself a rating of 9.8%.
Oh, goodness, that's quite high.
9.8 out of 10.
Yes. Yes. So what next? The issue has been also on reliability, because yes, you might really focus on expansion, but power reliability comes question.
I appreciate we have had occasionally challenges on issues reliability, but as an institution we are alive to this fact, and we have set out resources as outlined in our strategic plan. Indeed, over the next 4 or 5 years, we are putting together resources to the tune of about 200 billion, which will allow us, not only expand our existing infrastructure, but also modify what we already have on board. And modification in this case would look at issues like building new substations, reconductoring our lines, replacing rotten poles, and so on and so forth, just in an effort to make sure that the network is robust, and therefore then allowing our customers to enjoy quality supply, as it were.
Impact on cost?
Of course, like I said, we mobilizing resources, but those are capital expenditures which will then be spread over a number of years. And that, I would say, will not have an impact on cost of power. But of course, these are investments that we expect as an institution to inject with an effort to getting an inflow of revenues going forward.
Am I right to say perhaps maybe when you're negotiating with financiers, you're basing it on current cost and you still want to maintain it as that? But then again, if you look at kind of greater distribution or more distribution of power, you'd expect just a slight decrease in the cost of power, especially to the small consumers.
Granted, and I will want to look at this from what I would call the generation mix. And if you look at that mix as it were today, we are getting in a lot more renewable energy coming on board, more particularly injecting in a lot of geothermal. We also have wind power, we have solar, and so on and so forth. Unlike in the past where we were overly reliant on thermal generated power. Of course, we also have hydros, which if you are to look at the cost of generation, is what we would consider as the lowest cost in terms of cost of generating arising from each of the components. Now, having said that we are looking at injecting a lot more renewable energy, then the intention in all that is to bring down the cost of power, because unlike in the thermal generated power, where we have issues of foreign exchange, issues of fuel cost, in these other forms, we do not have those variables. And obviously then, if we inject in if we inject in power from renewable sources, then we would expect that the cost of power will gradually come down.
There recently has been a lot of works in Nairobi. What is quite interesting to note that there are underground cables coming through. What's the progress of this, and is this also part of your initiatives to kind of make it more reliable for industrial, especially now moving commercial, to your commercial customers?
Absolutely, absolutely. The intentions in all this is, we intend to create to get supply to our customers, which is not only stable but also quality, in the sense that we do not have these effects that you would see coming on board in overhead lines. This is a project that started some time back, and it is a project that is costing us 13.5 billion shillings to bring in a 220 kV underground cable from a substation in Embakasi to several substations within the CBD. Substations like what we have in Ligo Regency, what we also call the G1G substation, others in areas of Mamlaka, and so on and so forth. Like I said, the intention in all this is to improve the quality of supply to our customers. We are also using it, to create what we would call the flexibility in supply, so that in situations where we have one line, for example, supplying Ligo Regency going down, then we can also use the underground supply to deliver power to the same point. This is what the engineers would call the N-1 factor. To create flexibility within the network.
Would you think the business community is happy with you? Because there is always that point, especially in doing business in Kenya, and that will always come up, especially with the Minister of Industrialization saying that how is the access of electricity, especially to commercial consumers? And I'm not sure how your cost has been, because most of them will say perhaps they'll need a lot of power and maybe there isn't quite that accessibility or isn't quite that reliability onto them. So if you will speak to a commercial consumer who's actually using your facilities right now and who's also thinking about setting up even a manufacturing unit in the country.
Thank you very much. I know we've had challenges in the past, and when I say challenges relating to both reliability and accessibility. But what we've done, we have worked, and more particularly we are working with Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Indeed, in the last 1 week, we were with the membership and the leadership of Kenya Association of Manufacturers in Mombasa. And, what we are doing with Kenya Association of Manufacturers is ensuring that we have a membership which is happy. We have a membership which enjoys quality of supply, as it were. And do not forget, from where I sit as, the person responsible for Kenya Power, this is the biggest source of revenue to ourselves. And therefore, it is in our interest to ensure that that membership is comfortable, that membership is getting power that is quality, so that they can then engage themselves in their productive issues of the economy, as it were. So what we've done, and we are doing this alongside the leadership of Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We are ensuring that we go into a region like we went to Mombasa, identify the key challenges, we draw a roadmap, a matrix that looks at issues, what we need to do as KPLC, and by what timelines. And I want to let you know that when we went there in March, we identified such kind of issues. When I was there last week, we were just doing a checklist and basically taking out that this is what needed to have been done, and this is what we have done.
So talk to an investor then who's watching you right now and is actually willing to say, okay, well, Dr. Tarus, is there enough power that I can come in and set up my industry and just begin operations immediately?
If you look at the, what you would call the total generation at this point, we are doing about 2,333 megawatts against a big demand of 1,650 megawatts. That tells you we still have some headroom. Of course, the generally accepted headrooms are normally in the range of 30-35%. As Kenya, we are currently doing about 29.5%, which in my view is well within what we think is acceptable. Now, when you look at the other things that are lined up, we have signed a lot of PPAs with independent power producers, and others are lined up in the course of that. We also have PPAs that have been signed, but looking at generations coming on board 2018, 2019, 2020, all the way. And therefore, I would want to encourage any investor that, look, if you are looking for an investment destination, Kenya is indeed one of those countries you should come into.
All right, we'll leave it at that. I want to really engage you further on the feeder management program. This is a very new program that you're looking towards. It's increasing reliability and increasing access, especially to your retail consumers. What's the progress and what's your plan with this?
Thank you very much. This is something that, like you rightly pointed out, fairly new, and we are looking at sectionalizing our supplies into small feeders and assigning supervisors to look at those feeders as it were. And what we expect from a supervision perspective is you are looking at the maintenance, looking at revenue collection, billing, and issues around revenue collection, together with meter reading. I know we've had challenges where a lot of our meters have been estimated, but this is when we now want to address those issues of estimating, so that as a feeder owner, then you have a number of items which you are responsible. And then, you know, the intention in all this is to ensure that we have quick responses to issues raised by our customers. We have quick responses to issues relating to metering, quick responses to issues relating to revenue collections, so that we then don't go to situations where we have our money out there for so long when we so much needed to reinvest in our operations.
Speaking of tampering of your meters, I mean, there's just a lot more on those cases, especially when you look at towards, you know, people saying that they don't have power, but what you realize is actually an issue of either tampering or tapping of your network. Have you managed to fully resolve this?
I would say, Alan, that these are things that, you know, we resolve as and when we progress, because you know, you have, and in every society, you will never miss to have this. We have people whose interest every so often is to tamper with, you know, operations of things such as meters. What we have done is instituted mechanisms within our institution which takes care of that. And you perhaps will have seen lately that, you know, we are a lot more appearing in court with people or customers who have tampered with our meters, customers who have, you know, call it stealing electricity, or basically consuming power that is illegally connected. Now, we are addressing those challenges. But the idea in this feeder management program now is to bring closer the supervision of the feeder to the lowest point possible, so that in situations where it would have taken us, say, a month to respond to such issues, we will do it within a day or so. In this case, then, we will, you know, minimize those losses. And the effect of this, by the way, would be to increase our revenues and minimize the losses, which, just to give you a flavor, has been in the range of about 19.4%. Now, in this feeder, just to add a little, in this feeder management program, we, at the moment, have about 1,100 feeders. And when I compare to, say, about 4 years ago, where we had about 400 feeders, really, the number of feeders has grown. And this is why I'm saying, in order then to manage this a lot more closely, we need to sectionalize and assign supervisors.
Dr. Tarus, I know you're here with very ambitious and a lot of points, especially looking towards how we can increase this power output, but you're also very serious, especially to your customers who haven't paid. Well, I know you also had recently. You also actually closed, selling kiosk because of unpaid dues. What would you say is your outstanding? If you just give an average, what's your outstanding bills, especially to both commercial and retail, that is actually lagging at Kenya Power right now?
Without getting into specific as to figures, allow me to say this. You know, every so often our billing cycle is such that it rolls. Today you can be in arrears. When you pay, we invoice you the next week, and so on and so forth. So it is a figure that keeps rolling. But of course, having said that, my appeal to customers is, once you get your bill, please pay it to avoid disconnection or avoid getting into situations such as what you saw in Kibos.
But these are all state agencies. You're a state corporation. Is there perhaps maybe a more of a state-to-state kind of an agreement, especially because it's one government?
I agree, it's one government, but remember the National Treasury, when it shares the cake, it allocates to departments within government. Now, those departments have their priorities. And I want to believe one of their priorities is to pay their bills, be it water bills, electricity bills, just like they pay their salaries.
Yes.
So I would expect and I would urge institutions that, once you get your allocation from Treasury, please allocate resources for the payment of electricity and pay it when you receive your bill.
To avoid disconnection
to
and
avoid
inconveniences. Mr. Tarus, before I let you go, I just want to pick your brain just on a very global perspective. There's a lot of push, especially in the world, towards green energy, a lot of push towards, just ensuring that we have clean sources of power. As Kenya Power, I don't know what are some of the initiatives that you're doing, even as you deal with distribution, but you also make sure that as a country, we actually are using green energy.
Like I said earlier, it's interesting because when you look at the generation mix, in the past we have had, a huge generation coming out of thermal. Then gradually we had hydros. But when you look at the generation mix as we speak, renewable sources is actually taking the lead. In our case, for example, about 49% of our generation mix comes from renewable sources. You are looking at solar, combined wind, and geothermal. Now, when you look at that as a country, in fact, we are almost rated as the country that actually uses the greatest sources of energy coming out of renewable sources. And therefore, what we have done is to encourage as much as possible, of course, from a PPA perspective, because that's where Kenya Power comes on board. From a PPA perspective, institutions that are looking at generating power using the renewable sources and getting a lot less of what is coming through the thermal sources.
Allow me to cut short. To break it down to our viewers, the PPAs or public-private partnerships looking at that, and of course also tapping a lot to other distributors or other energy creators who are also going into a lot more solar. We've seen a lot of an increase, especially to solar generators and what have you. So I don't know what's your call to them in terms of just even encouraging more of that you should not quite be reliant on what Kenya Power might give, but also just being there also own producers of power, which you can actually even purchase.
You're actually right, and it is clear that going forward, demand for power will be, and more particularly if you look at demand coming from SGR and the other investments through the Ministry of Industrialization, the SMEs and so on and so forth. So we would encourage a lot more generators, even if it's on small basis, come on board, generate, the market is huge.
Dr. Ken Tarus, thank you so much for speaking with us. That has been none other than the Acting Managing Director of Kenya Power. Just getting more details into, of course, the feeder management program, where we are at with the last mile connectivity program. I think I like how you ended that you think you can be a green energy generator, generate your power, and I think Kenya Power will be